I moved to a small town in a new country. Everything was different. The people, the food, and even the weather. But the hardest part for me was the language. English was everywhere. I had learned English before. I knew many words. I could read and write. But when I tried to speak, it was hard. My tongue felt heavy. My words came out wrong. People looked at me with confusion. Sometimes they smiled politely. Other times they did not understand at all. The first time I spoke English in the town was at a small bakery. I wanted to buy bread. I knew the word bread. I had practiced it many times. But when I said it, the lady behind the counter looked at me strangely. I tried again, slower this time, but it still did not sound right. I left the bakery feeling sad. I thought, how can I live here if I can't even ask for bread? My heart felt heavy, just like my tongue. I decided to walk around the town to clear my mind. As I walked, I noticed a small park. There were benches and trees and a few people sitting quietly. I sat on a bench and watched the people. Some were speaking English, but they spoke so fast. I could not understand them. Others were reading books or looking at their phones. Then I saw something that made me smile. A man was sitting on a bench with a small dog. He was speaking to the dog in English. The dog wagged its tail happily. The man's words were simple and clear. He said, "Sit," and the dog sat. He said, "Good boy," and the dog barked. I watched them for a while. The man repeated the same words many times. "Sit, good boy, sit, good boy." The words were easy to understand, and I noticed something. He pronounced each word slowly and clearly. An idea came to me. If the dog could learn English, maybe I could too. But I needed to practice in a new way. I needed to hear the words over and over just like the dog did. And I needed to speak them, even if they came out wrong at first. I got up from the bench and started to walk home. My steps felt lighter now. I was ready to try again. This time I would find a way to make the words feel natural in my mouth. This was just the beginning. The next day, I returned to the park. I went to the same bench where I saw the man with the dog. I hoped he would be there again. I wanted to watch and listen to him more, but when I arrived, the bench was empty. The man and his dog were not there. I felt a little disappointed. But I did not want to give up. I sat on the bench anyway and thought about what I could do. Then an idea came to me. I could practice on my own, just like the man practiced with his dog. I decided to start with simple words. I looked around the park. I saw trees, flowers, birds, and people. I knew the English words for all of these things, so I began to say them out loud, one by one. "Tree," I said, looking at a tall tree nearby. The word felt strange on my tongue, but I said it again. "Tree." Next, I looked at a flower. "Flower," I said. It was a little harder to say, but I tried again. "Flower." I kept going, pointing at different things and saying their names. Bird, bench, dog. Each word was like a small step. I was slow at first, but the more I said them, the easier they became. As I practiced, a woman walking by smiled at me. She was holding a baby in her arms. She stopped for a moment and said something to me. Her words were too fast, so I didn't understand them. I felt embarrassed, but I smiled back and nodded. The woman saw that I did not understand, so she spoke more slowly. "Nice day, isn't it?" she said, looking up at the clear blue sky. I understood her this time. "Yes, nice day," I replied, trying to copy her pronunciation. She smiled again and walked away. I felt proud of myself. It was a small conversation, but it was a start. I realized that I could learn from the people around me, just like I was learning from the park. I didn't have to be perfect, I just had to keep trying. Every day, I returned to the park. I practiced my words out loud, and sometimes people would stop to talk to me. Some were patient and kind. They spoke slowly, and I tried my best to reply. Others were in a hurry, but I did not let that bother me. Little by little, I noticed something important. My words were becoming clearer. My tongue was not as heavy as before. When I said tree or flower, the sounds felt more natural. I was learning to speak with confidence. The park became my classroom, and every person I met became my teacher. My English was still not perfect, but it was getting better every day. I was no longer afraid to speak. One morning after practicing in the park, I decided to visit a small grocery store near my home. I needed a few things, and I thought it would be a good chance to practice more English. The store was quiet, with only a few people inside. I walked around, picking up what I needed, some fruit, milk, and a loaf of bread. As I walked to the counter, I felt a little nervous. I remembered my first visit to the bakery and how difficult it was to communicate. But this time I felt more prepared. The shopkeeper was an older man with a kind face. He greeted me with a warm smile. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," I replied, trying to sound confident. I placed my items on the counter. He began to ring them up. "Is that all for today?" he asked. I hesitated for a moment. I wanted to ask him something, but I wasn't sure if I could say it right. But then I remembered how I had practiced in the park. I took a deep breath and spoke. "Do you have eggs?" I asked slowly, making sure to pronounce each word clearly. The shopkeeper's smile grew wider. "Yes, we have eggs. They're over there," he said, pointing to a shelf behind me. "Thank you," I said, feeling a little more confident. I walked over, picked up a carton of eggs, and returned to the counter. As he added the eggs to my items, the shopkeeper said, "Your English is good. Are you learning?" I felt both surprised and happy. "Yes, I'm learning," I said. "It's hard, but I practice every day." "That's the best way to learn," he replied. "Practice makes perfect, and you're doing well." His kind words gave me a boost of confidence. I smiled and nodded. After I paid for my groceries, the shopkeeper handed me my change and said, "Come back any time. We can talk more if you like." "Thank you," I said, feeling grateful. "I will." As I left the store, I felt proud of myself. I had spoken English in a real conversation, and it had gone well. The shopkeeper's encouragement meant a lot to me. It showed me that people were willing to help if I tried my best. From that day on, I made it a habit to visit the grocery store often. Each time I tried to say a little more, ask more questions, or simply chat with the shopkeeper. Sometimes we talked about the weather. Other times he would tell me about the different foods in the store. Each conversation helped me learn new words and improve my pronunciation. The grocery store became another place where I could practice and learn. With each visit, I became more comfortable speaking English. I no longer worried about making mistakes because I knew that every word I spoke was a step forward. I was slowly building my confidence, and the fear of speaking was starting to disappear. Weeks passed, and my English kept improving. I practiced in the park, talked with the shopkeeper, and even tried speaking to neighbors. Each day I felt a little more confident, and my words felt smoother on my tongue.